This is VOA Africa.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githu. It's Monday, January 6th. This is Africa 54. An American soldier and 2 contractors are killed in an al-Shabaab attack on a military base in Kenya. We'll have a live update from the Pentagon. Africa 54 examines the human toll of attacks by armed Islamist groups in Burkina Faso. And in our sports report, we'll take a closer look at the Nigerian female golfer taking the links by storm. We begin our broadcast tonight in East Africa, where 3 United States Department of Defense members were killed in Kenya by the Somalia-based al-Shabaab terrorist group during a pre-dawn attack on a key military base used by U.S. counter-terrorism forces. A cloud of black smoke could be seen rising from the Manda Bay airfield in the coastal town of Lamu along the Kenya-Somalia border. The attack also destroyed several U.S. aircraft and vehicles before it was repelled, according to military officials. It was the al-Qaeda-linked al-Shabaab attack against U.S. forces in Kenya. A Kenyan military spokesman says that 5 attackers were killed. U.S. military command in Africa, known as AFRICOM, confirmed some of the smoke could have originated from the destruction of equipment at the base. Al-Shabaab said in a statement that it had taken control of part of the base and it had inflicted casualties in the attack. And we'll be with our Pentagon reporter shortly, but first, on the heels of the U.S. drone attack that killed Iranian General Qassem Soleimani, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei presided over prayers Monday as hundreds of thousands of people assembled in Tehran to mourn the country's top general. Iran is vowing retaliation against America for the death of Soleimani. Iran also says it will no longer limit itself to any restrictions on nuclear centrifuges or the enrichment of the uranium as long as there are U.S. sanctions on the country. VOA's Arasha Arbasadi has more.
Sunday in Iran, tens of thousands of mourners joined a funeral procession escorting the casket of General Qassem Soleimani. A U.S. drone strike Friday on Baghdad International Airport killed Soleimani and those with him. The strike came days after members and supporters of an Iraqi militia stormed the U.S. embassy in Baghdad. Iraq's parliament reacted Sunday by approving a resolution asking their government to oust American troops. President Trump at an event Friday in Miami said killing Soleimani stopped an imminent threat.
He was plotting attacks against Americans, but now we've ensured that his atrocities have been stopped for good. They are stopped for good. I don't know if you know what was happening, but he was planning a very major attack, and we got him.
Skeptics call the evidence for a Soleimani-led major attack razor-thin and say it puts Americans at risk. Sunday, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the strike came at just the right time.
The senior leaders who had access to all of the intelligence, there was no skepticism. The intelligence assessment made clear that no action, allowing Soleimani to continue his plotting and his planning, his terror campaign, created more risk than taking the action that we took last week.
Trump says he does not want war with Iran, but Saturday on Twitter he threatened strikes against Iranian cultural sites if Iran strikes back, a war crimes violation of the Geneva Convention. Pompeo said the U.S. will behave lawfully. Members of Iran's parliament Sunday gathered to chant in Farsi, "Death to America." Tensions have always been high between the Trump administration and Iran. Trump unilaterally withdrew the United States from the multinational nuclear deal with the Islamic Republic to limit its enrichment capabilities. Iran said Sunday that it would no longer abide by any rules of that agreement. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News, Washington.
Now back to the story we talked to you about, the al-Shabaab attack in Kenya. And for more on this attack, VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb is standing by live at the U.S. military headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. Hello, Carla. What are you hearing from Pentagon officials?
Hello,
about this
Esther.
attack?
It's been very busy here.
So what are you hearing from Pentagon officials on this
concerning
attack?
the al-Shabaab attack? That's right. I hear you loud and clear. And concerning the attack that happened in Kenya, I am hearing from defense officials that about 20 members of al-Shabaab attacked the perimeter. They were able to use RPGs and indirect fire to breach the security gate of the base. They were able to penetrate onto the airfield, but they went no further than that. I am hearing that there were, as you reported, 3 deaths, 3 American deaths, 1 service member and 2 contractors were killed. 2 additional Americans were wounded. They are in stable condition and they have been evacuated at this point. No Kenyans were injured in the attack. That is what I am hearing from my sources. But let's remember, al-Shabaab had put out a statement saying that there were hundreds of deaths. They later changed their statement saying that there were 17 deaths. The facts on the ground is that there were 3 deaths, and we are still trying to figure out just how 20 members of al-Shabaab were able to penetrate a base.
And that raises the question, Carla, is the base secure?
Well, I am hearing from my defense officials on the ground and around with U.S. Africa Command that there has been a task force from Djibouti that has been deployed to Kenya to help further secure the base. There are about 350 U.S. service members in Kenya. This will add to that number, of course, and they are hoping that with that additional support, they will be able to keep the base secure. I am being told it is secure at this point, but the situation was fluid for quite some time. In fact, I heard that al-Shabaab was able to penetrate for more than an hour before they were eventually repelled.
So do officials think that al-Shabaab is becoming more emboldened?
Well, that's a great question, Esther, because if you think about it, this is not just the only attack that al-Shabaab has done recently. In fact, we were hearing that on the same day yesterday that the American-supported base was attacked. There was a base that holds British forces in Kenya that was also that al-Shabaab also tried to attack. We have heard that 3 suspected terrorists were arrested before they were able to penetrate that base. But this all comes on the heels of a massive attack in Mogadishu that Africa 54 has reported on. About 80 people were killed in that attack, and defense officials are telling me that they suspect al-Shabaab tried to carry out these attacks to change the narrative and cause a distraction. He said that what they did was terrible. It was a humanitarian disaster. They killed lots of civilians. They received harsh feedback from that, and this was their way to say that they're still relevant and they're trying to shift the narrative.
Carla, thank you so much. VOA's Carla Babb reporting live for us from the Pentagon. Now, in West Africa, residents in Burkina Faso are mourning after 14 people were killed and 19 wounded when a bus carrying students ran over an improvised explosive device on Saturday in northern Burkina Faso, according to government officials. The incident occurred in Sourou province near Burkina's border with Mali, where Islamist groups with links to al-Qaeda and Islamic State have increased attacks over the past 2 years, despite international efforts to eliminate them. Multiple sources say the convoy had been ferrying students back from an end-of-year school break. 7 students are among the dead, according to a government statement. It is not clear who was responsible for the blast, which hit 1 bus in a convoy of 3 that was carrying 160 passengers in total. A human rights report released Monday details atrocities committed in Burkina Faso by armed Islamists linked to both al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. The report is based on interviews with over 50 victims and witnesses interviewed during field research in Burkina Faso in November and December 2019. For more on this report, I'm joined by Corinne Dufka, the Human Rights Watch West Africa Director. Corinne, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
So what have you learned from this research? Why is there a surge in this kind of attacks in Burkina Faso?
Well, indeed, there's been a surge in violence by all sides over the last year. Over the last year, we've documented hundreds of people killed. First, you have many bold attacks against the militaries in the Sahel region, as well as hundreds of people killed, particularly in Mali, by ethnically allied militia groups. And in Burkina Faso, these groups have migrated south into Burkina. Burkina is a key country because it is the bridge state, the linchpin state between Islamist activities in the north, in the Sahel, and then the rest of sub-Saharan Africa.
Do we know who they are targeting? Do they have a specific target? Because we've seen this going on and on, as we just read in the news that happened on Saturday,
yeah.
On the bus that was attacked with the students in there dead. Do we know what is really behind this and who are they targeting?
Well, the victims that we have documented are largely from agrarian communities. There's an ethnic dynamic that's very worrying throughout the Sahel and in Burkina Faso. The Islamists have targeted their recruitment at the Fulani or Pul population. And the attacks, the victims of the vast majority of attacks that we documented are on the other side, are from ethnic groups, agriculturalist ethnic groups. And we've really noticed a change in the dynamic from 2016-17, where the Islamists largely attacked representatives of the state with the goal of them leaving. But now they're engaging in indiscriminate and sometimes targeted attacks against entire villages. We documented terrible attacks in which they surrounded marketplaces and churches and mosques and massacred people, as well as attacks on convoys like the one in November that targeted, that killed over 38 people working for a West African or a Canadian mining
company. You mentioned this is, the whole of Sahel region is under these Islamist, attacks. Do we know if there are regional coordinated efforts from the leaders there, from the governments there, to tackle these elements?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the dynamic of targeting civilians we see in North and Mali as well, and in Nigeria as well. So we have called on these groups to make a distinction between an armed actor with a gun and civilians who are just going about their daily lives.
And how is the international community responding to this?
Well, the Sahel is getting higher up on the international agenda, particularly because of this severe deterioration in security and the increasing numbers of civilians being killed in all three countries.
So from a human rights perspective, what needs to be done to quell this kind of insurgency in the area?
First of all, we call on the government to do more to protect the civilian population. We call on the government to abide by international humanitarian law in their counterterrorism response, because they have engaged in, they have adopted an aggressive counterterrorism response, which is pushing a lot of people into the hands of the jihadists. And then, of course, we call on the jihadists to make a distinction between civilian targets and military targets.
Wow, Corinne, it's interesting to see that this has continued unabated, and especially in Burkina Faso. And we hope that there will be a serious response from the international community to help quell this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, I have more time for you. So what does human rights recommend then after doing this report? And maybe you can touch a little bit on what you heard from the witnesses. What was touching most?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they really provided absolutely devastating responses. I spoke with the faithful, both Christian and Muslims. They described how the Islamists, typically arriving on dozens of motorcycles, surrounded the church, at one point surrounding a mosque, and then targeted people, forced them to lay down, and then executed them point blank after executing the priest. We documented a terrible case of an attack on a humanitarian convoy in which motorized tricycles were bringing humanitarian aid to a displaced area, displaced camp, and they were intercepted, again, forced to lay down and then executed point blank, as well as cases in which, for example, even the 24th of December on Christmas Eve, where Islamists attacked the town of Arbinda. They attacked the gendarmerie, and then they went into a neighborhood in which there were thousands of displaced and just opened fire, killing over 30 women.
Thank you, Corinne. I imagine the impact is huge. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
All right. Corinne Dufka is the Human Rights Watch West Africa Director. We're excited to hear what you think about the Africa 54, and we'll be back.
Clara Frank, and here's what's trending. The fashion designer behind the Ika-Look label is 34-year-old Namisa Terra, whose artistic ambition is to bring back the Mali into everyday smartwear. She launched her new collection at a fashion show in Bamako late in 2019. It's called Bara, which means work in Bambara. Terra says she gets inspiration from bloggers and fashion shows. Her target consumers are young professionals who are rejecting mass-produced Western clothes and want more than the traditional Malian style. Known for its quality because it is picked by hand, African cotton makes up 10% of world production. Mali is the lead producer in sub-Saharan Africa. Next up, from the Keurig of cocktails and soft, squishy comfort robots to artificial intelligence-fueled projector screens and personalized skincare regimens, more than 200 new products appeared at a media event on Sunday, ahead of the annual Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, Nevada. Artificial intelligence and 5G networks were two themes dominating this year, with smart homes, personal health and wellness, and transportation also areas of growth. And finally, there was a lot of glam on the Golden Globes red carpet as the stars shimmered and shined Sunday on one of the season's biggest nights for fashion. The top trends this year included bold brights, dramatic feathers, sequins, and black and white. Mostly, though, the theme for the night was chic understatement and form-fitting gowns. And that's what's trending today.
1 year ago, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari signed into law the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Act to help the country's disabled. However, Nigeria's blind, visually impaired say they are still struggling against poverty and bias, with many forced to beg for a living. Ifyok Etang reports from Jos, Nigeria.
72-year-old Samaila Adamu is repairing this faulty generator using very unique tools. After losing his vision 26 years ago, Adamu learned to spot motorized faults through sound and touch.
When people bring generators for repairs, I touch the parts and feel them. Then I know what's wrong with them.
Adamu makes less than $5 on every generator repair, barely enough to provide for his 3 wives and 19 children. But he says it keeps him from begging on the streets.
It helps me provide food to feed myself, my wives, and children. I don't receive assistance from anyone.
There are over 1 million blind Nigerians and about 3 million living with visual impairments. The Nigerian Association for the Blind says many are living in abject poverty.
You can't separate disability with poverty, because most of those of us that have visual impairment are from poor homes. Had it been our parents were well-to-do, maybe we would have gone to better hospitals for better treatment, we wouldn't have been blind.
President Muhammadu Buhari in January 2019 signed into law the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Act. But Nigeria's visually impaired, like special education teacher Liki Idris says, they still face bias when looking for work.
When I go to any place to apply for a job and they turn me down, I feel so dejected. What I feel those people are looking at is the impairment I'm going all about with.
Nigerian authorities plan to follow up on the Disabilities Act by establishing a national commission for the disabled to ensure access to education and work. Ifyok Etang for VOA News, Jos, Nigeria.
It's time for Monday Sports Report, and joining us now is Sandy Shomari with a look at what's happening in the world of tennis. Sandy?
Thanks, Esther. A lot is happening, and in tennis, Dominic Thiem overcame the disappointment of his season-opening loss on Saturday and clinched a win for Austria on Monday evening in Sydney, Australia at the ATP Cup. The world number 4 defeated Diego Schwartzman 6-3, 7-6 to lead Austria to a 3-0 victory against Argentina. It was a must-win tie for Austria, who lost to Croatia on Saturday. Austria and Argentina both now hold 1-1 records heading into the final round of Group E matches on Wednesday. Veterans Oliver Marach and Jurgen Melzer finished off the sweep for Austria against Argentina with a 6-1, 6-4 win against Maximo Gonzalez and Andres Maltini. In Group B, world number 1, Rafael Nadal sharpened his serve and cruised to a 6-2, 6-1 victory over Pablo Cuevas of Uruguay. And Dakar Rally debutant Fernando Alonso avoided any first stage pitfalls as the 2020 edition of Motorsport grueling 7,500-kilometer marathon began in Saudi Arabia on Sunday. Alonso, trying to make history as the first Formula One champion to win the event, completed the drive from Jeddah to Al-Waj in his Toyota in 11th place. The 38-year-old Spaniard, with 5-time Dakar bike champion Marco Goma navigating, was of quarter of an hour behind the surprise stage winner Vedastos Zala. Last year's winner Nasser Al-Attiyad led the way for over 200 kilometers, but he had to settle for 4th place after late mechanical problems with his Toyota. And in NFL, the Seattle Seahawks beat the Philadelphia Eagles 17-9 after Marshawn Lynch and DK Metcalf touchdowns in each half. And Minnesota Vikings upset the NFC's number 3 seed with a Kyle Rudolph's touchdown in overtime, giving them a shocking 26-20 win at the New Orleans Saints. Seattle will now visit the Green Bay Packers in the NFC divisional round, while the Vikings are at the San Francisco 49ers. While Philadelphia won the NFC East, they suffered a host of injuries as they won their last 4 games to reach the playoffs. They also lost quarterback Carson Wentz on Sunday to a head injury. That meant 40-year-old backup Josh McCown became the oldest player in NFL history to make his postseason debut. Speaking of shockers, on Saturday, the Tennessee Titans did the unexpected by shocking NFL giants New England Patriots 20-13. This loss marks first time the Patriots have been eliminated before the AFC Championship game since the 2010 postseason and ends their streak of 3 consecutive Super Bowl appearances. And Ianobong Essien is only 13 years old and ranked number 1 in Nigeria in the under-18 golf category. Essien, who plays in Nigeria's junior golf circuit, is aiming to add her medal haul at the 2022 Youth Summer Olympics, where she'll be representing her country. Serena Chowdhury reports.
She's 13 years old and ranked number 1 in Nigeria in the under-18 golf category. Ayene Essien fell in love with the sport aged just 5 while seeing others play during a visit to Abuja's popular IBB golf club.
I saw the boy playing. I wanted to take his clubs, but my dad said no. So he asked me if I wanted to play, and I said yeah. So he bought me clubs, and then I got a golf professional to train me.
She attended her first tournament that year, won a medal, and hasn't looked back. Over the past 8 years, she's represented Nigeria 11 times across Europe, Africa, and America, with 17 medals to show for it. The prodigy says she loves golf because it has taught her about self-reliance and accountability.
In this game, you compete against yourself and not other players, which is very exciting. Since you compete against yourself and other people, even though your caddy is caddying for you, it's still your mistake. You're the one playing, so you can't blame your caddy or anyone for the mistake you made.
Essien's parents attend most of her practices and tournaments. Her father, Ayo Essien, often doubles up as her caddy.
She still has some room for growth. And I think, as I said, by the age of 15, I mean, she will be ripe, to take the golf world by storm.
The teenage golfer also has other plans, including attending university to study artificial intelligence aerobotics. Although for now she's practicing hard, hoping to deliver her country's first gold medal for golf at the 2022 Summer Youth Olympics.
And that was Serena Chowdhury, Reuters reporting. And that wraps our sports for today. Esther, back to you.
I'm not going anywhere, Sandy. When you're famous, we're going to have to learn to pronounce your name. Now,
Yes.
This little girl is a dynamite, right?
It is, for sure.
Tiger Woods of Africa.
Can you imagine? Tiger Woods started at 20 years old back in 1996, Esther. You remember that time? And he became a big superstar. This young girl is only 13 years old. Her father says 2 more years, she'll be all over the place. And I believe and I concur with that. That's true.
So,
she'll make headlines for sure.
So what lesson for the rest of Africa?
Girls, you can make it happen in Africa. Ladies, you can make it happen. It doesn't matter. You can do it. Whether it's golf or whatever, you are able to make it happen. And this is a good example of what's going to happen. 2022, we should see this young girl.
And you think it's going to put Nigeria's map somewhere else,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. Nigeria's map is going all over. Nigerians will be all over this thing. And I'll tell you, she'll put Nigeria on the map again. From soccer to golf. What a great story.
Are you going to play golf?
I hope so. What about you?
I will try.
You'll try.
Take the kids out first.
Okay.
We'll learn how to pronounce her name right, right?
Sure.
She's famous. Sunday, thank you. All right, be sure to join Sunday Shomari next Monday for another exciting sports report right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a good evening.